Hi, my name is Russell Bowyer and I'm from Scuba Diving Earth. And today I'm going to be talking about scuba diving equipment for a beginner or newbie diver. Now, I'm not going to recommend that you buy everything on this list. There's 16 items on the list, but I will go through each one and what I recommend that you do with each of those and when you might buy them. Certain items I think is a good idea to buy right from the very start, and then you can build up your equipment as you go along. There's certain things that you wouldn't want to buy straight away because you don't know what type of diving you're doing until you get more experience and you certify yourself to do different types of diving. But there's certain things that are good to have depending on where you're going to be diving, and then you can progress on. If you've got the money to buy a lot of this stuff, then go for it. Why not? I did when I first started out. I bought everything that I needed, and then I could be self-sufficient. But anyway, let's crack on. And the very first thing to do is a diver's mask. There are two types of diver's mask. There's this one which is got one piece of glass, and make sure when you buy it it's tempered glass. It will tell you on there. And then the second one will be two pieces of glass. So you'll have two separate pieces of glass. The ones with the separate pieces of glass, people can argue they're better if you've got prescription lenses. You can have them attached on the inside. One where you've got one full piece of glass perhaps lets a little bit more light in. The second piece of kit is a snorkel. There are two types of snorkel. This one is what's called a wet snorkel, so it's got an open end, and when you go underwater this will fill up with water, and then when you come to the surface you have to blow it and blow the water out. The other type, I don't have one to show you, but essentially that's a dry snorkel. On the end you'll know it's different because it'll have like a valve that closes off when you go underwater so it doesn't fill up. I prefer this type. It's simple, it's cheaper, so the dry snorkels with the valve tend to be a little bit more expensive. The third piece of equipment that I think you should buy straight away and definitely get is fins. This particular fin is what's called an open foot fin, and it has a strap to put on. But when you buy this type of fin, you'll also need to buy yourself booties. This is a neoprene bootie which goes on your foot, and then your foot and the bootie goes inside, and it avoids you getting your foot sore when you're putting inside the actual fin. The good thing about these is they're effectively made up of two different types of material. This bit where your foot goes is more sort of rubberized, and the actual fin itself is a harder sort of plasticky material, and it's better for underwater propulsion for sure. The other type is a full foot type of fin, so instead of having this open foot, it would be like a shoe, so you put your foot in the whole thing. They tend to be a little bit cheaper. They're great if you're doing blue water warm diving, and great for snorkeling. However, in a minute I'll be talking about exposure suits, and if you buy yourself a dry suit and dry suit diving, you'll have to use this type of fin because the whole suit will have a foot on it, or enclosed foot part that you'll have to be able to put into here, and you wouldn't be able to get a closed foot style fin on your foot. And just as a quick aside, this is a fin. Don't call them flippers. Start calling them flippers, people take the mickey out of you, and you could end up having to buy the first round at the bar. They're fins. The good thing about buying those first three pieces of kit, so your mask, your snorkel and your fins, when you go on holiday, whether you're on a resort or wherever you are, you've not only got them for going diving, but also you've got them to go snorkeling too. But I prefer to have my own mask and snorkel, certainly because I don't really want to be putting other people's snorkels or other people's masks or one that other people have worn on my face and in my mouth. That's my preference, and it's a good tip as your first pieces of kit to buy. So after that, I always recommend that you have a diver's watch. I've had one all the time on my diving, but make sure that it's got a depth number on there. I recommend to buy one that's got 200 meters. Now, whilst you're not going to be diving at 200 meters, it makes sure that whatever depth you are diving to, it's not going to be leaking. So make sure it's got 200 meters or 200 atmosphere regulated depth that can go to. A tip: having a watch when you dive, it's just in case your dive computer, if you have one, goes wrong. make a note of what time you go down, because then you know how long you've been diving for, because that will help to know what you know how long you've been on that dive. So it's always good to have one. Number 5, the next thing on the list is a dive computer. Now, this one is a console type computer, and I tend to have that on one wrist, and I have my watch on the other one. You can get another type, which is actually a watch style dive computer. So it's a watch come dive computer, which you don't need to buy a watch as well. However, they tend to be quite bulky as a watch, so whether you want to have one of those and wear it every day, that's up to you. But that's what you can do. The other style, which is, you can see that from here, is the console style, which is actually attached by a hose to your regulator, and that works too. These type, the more modern type of these ones, they tend to be linked to your air supply, so it will tell you how much air you're using. But this type and the watch style, you can actually also have one where you've got a gadget that attaches to your regulators, so it can monitor your air usage. But they tend to be a little bit more expensive, of course. The next item of equipment that you need to buy is your exposure suit, and there's essentially 3 types of exposure suit. There's a wet suit, and as the name describes, you get wet, and they range from about 2 or 3 mil, the thickness of the actual suit, right the way through to 7 mil. Although the 7 mil, and that's when you move on to the next stage, I'll just move this out of the way, over here, what's called a semi-dry. Now, semi-dry are not only thicker, but they restrict the flow of water through your body, and they're better for colder water diving, and they keep you a little bit warmer. The third style, which I prefer if I'm diving in colder water, is actually, is a dry suit. This is a dewy dry suit, and a dry suit keeps you warm. It has a dry zip, and you know, that's for certainly colder water diving. If you're going to be diving in the northern parts of North America and Canada, or some places around the UK or other places. I mean, I've dived in South Africa, and I've used a dry suit there. It just keeps you that little bit warmer. If you buy a dry suit, always a good tip to buy some wax to wax the dry zip. But in addition to that, if you're going to be diving in colder waters, a hood to keep your head warm, and a pair of neoprene gloves to keep your hands warm too. The next on the list is your regulators, and these come in 3 sections. You've got your main regulator and your first stage. That's the first part of it. And then second to that, you have your second regulator or secondary, which is normally called an octopus, and it's distinguishable because it'll have a yellow hose, and that's in case your buddy gets in trouble, you can give that to them. And the third part of it is your console A, which will have your air gauge on there to tell you what your contents of the air is and how much you're using it. I always recommend on the other side to have at least an underwater compass, because then you can tell which direction you're going in. And in fact, this one's actually got a depth gauge on it, so in case my dive computer goes wrong, I know how deep I've dived. There is a fourth hose on this one. So if you're diving with a dry suit, you'll need a dry suit hose too, which clips in to put air into a dry suit, but that's for another video. Number 8 is a BCD, or buoyancy control device. There are 2 types of buoyancy control device. This one was a jacket style, so it's like a jacket, and it wraps around you effectively, so the air is a buoyancy all around you. The benefit of these is that they have more pockets. I think they're great. I personally prefer this style, although they tend to be a little bit heavier and not so good for travelling. The other style of BCD is the bladder style, and basically the bladder is all behind you around your tank, and they tend to be a bit lighter, and they're better for underwater buoyancy because it's all behind you. It tends to help keep you more horizontal in the water, but you have to be a little bit mindful of that when you come to the surface, because when you surface and you fill it up, it can tend to push you a bit forward. But you know, once you get used to it, it's fine. The next on the list is a dive torch. Now, dive torch, I think, is something you should get fairly early on. They're not particularly expensive. You can get them on Amazon. I'll put a link below actually. This particular one, it's great, and this is a Valandor. I think it's around about 30 or 40 pounds. I don't know how that converts to dollars, but it's certainly under $50. Very good, very bright, and I always take a dive torch, whether it's a day dive or a night dive. Day dives, if you go into a wreck, you want to be able to see what you're looking at. You know, you go into a deep dark part of a wreck and you can't see a thing. Put a torch on, you're great, good to go. The other thing is under ledges to look at fish and so on and so forth. But like I say, also for a night dive, you can't night dive without a torch. And I certainly recommend, if you've not done a night dive as a beginner scuba diver or new to the sport, definitely do it. I will do another video on tips about night diving too, because it's great fun. In addition, if you're going to be doing night diving, something like this, which is a strobe light, it's a bit of safety equipment that you can attach to your BCD for when you come to the surface. Stick it on and then you're more visible to the boat, can pick you up, or if you do happen to drift off, you're more easily spottable with that. The next piece of equipment, which I think is a good piece of safety equipment to have, is a surface marker buoy, or a delayed surface marker buoy. A surface marker buoy, this inflates, you put it on it stays at the surface and the reel runs down, and then you got your reel and line connects to that, and as you go through the water, normally on a drift dive, which I'll do another video about that actually, and this follows you along so the boat knows where you are in the water. The difference between that and a delayed surface marker buoy, which is this, is you don't have that, you don't leave this on the surface, this comes down with you, and at the end of the dive you deploy this by filling this up with air, shooting it to the surface, and this is sticks up in the water. It's called, another name for it is a sausage, because it looks like a sausage sticking out of the water, and it's clearly visible to dive boats and other people around you, and then you can use that to reel yourself up, and it's good actually to hold on to when you're doing your safety stop as well, or if you end up doing decompression stop dives, it's a great way of stopping at your decompression stop stages too. Next on the list, number 11, is a diver's slate. I always take this on dives because you've got all your different dive signals, you're okay and up and down and not okay, etc. However, if you want to have a conversation with someone, unless you're very good at sign language or reading sign language, it's no good. So if you want to explain something to someone or you want to ask a question, just write it down on this and then they can write it down. I've had more comments about this from people saying, oh, what a great idea. Because invariably, most dives, I actually use it, believe it or not. So diver's slate, and it's not particularly expensive. So I recommend you have one of those and just stick it in your pocket. I just stick it in the pocket of my BCD, and if I need to pull it out, I pull it out, write on it and put it back again. Diver's bag. Now, you can get different types of diver's bag. You can get the big ones that you can take on holiday with you with all your kit in, or alternatively, what I sometimes do, say if I'm going to somewhere like Barbados, I'll take a normal suitcase and I pack this away. It's a Mare's one actually. Great piece of kit. And what happens, you unzip it and it opens out into like a sausage shaped bag, and you put all your kit in it when you arrive, and you can take it backwards and forwards with that. Great piece of kit, not too expensive, and pack it away, and it's quite light to take with you on holiday. Underwater camera or GoPro, great to have if you want to take films or pictures when you're underwater, and then you can play them back and remember all your memories of diving and the fish and creatures that you see, and wrecks. Great to have. Weights. Now, I have a weight belt and weights, but I only use that when I'm diving in the UK. Wherever you live, if you're America, Canada, Australia, wherever it is, if you're going to be diving in your own country, there's nothing wrong with buying that, but you don't want to be travelling with this. These are very, very heavy. You don't want to be taking this on an aeroplane, and they normally come complete with your, when you're actually diving. This will come as part of the package. So only buy this if you're going to be diving locally or somewhere near where you live. And it's quite not particularly expensive, but don't buy it straight away because you can normally get those certainly wherever you're going to be diving. Same applies to diving tanks or cylinders. I have two, as it happens, because I don't dive so much now in the UK, but when I used to dive a lot in the UK and had twin sets, so I had two of them. and I used to have them filled up. It's just a lot better and easier having your own tank. But if you're going to be just travelling diving, don't bother buying something like this, because that comes as part of the package, and when you go on a liverboard or a resort dive, they will supply these and it will come as part of the package and what you're paying for. So don't bother buying those unless you're going to be diving locally and want to have your own tanks. Finally on the list, number 16, is a diver's knife. Now, I've not dived with a diver's knife for years now, because a lot of dive boats, certainly liverboards, they don't like you having one because they're a bit worried that you might use them underwater. They are a good piece of safety equipment, because if you get caught up in or tangled up in nets or lines, you can cut yourself free. It's up to you, but you obviously be careful when you're traveling, because of course if you go through security and they want to have a look through your bags, you've got a big knife in there. Of course you can explain it's for diving and it's normally okay, but just be a bit careful with that. Thank you for listening. Give us a thumbs up if you've liked what you've heard today. Please subscribe if you want to listen to more of our videos, and you'll get notified when I update this, because I'm going to give you many more tips and things about scuba diving as a beginner scuba diver. And this has been Russell Bowyer of ScubaDivingEarth.com, and thanks for listening. Take care and happy scuba diving. Bye for now.